Hi, and welcome to this AI in C# video on the Microsoft Agent Framework. Today's topic is OpenAI's Response API. And this video is only going to be an introduction because this topic is actually way bigger than I had originally thought it was when I began researching it. So we are going to show slides in this one only, and then all the features that OpenAI's Response API have that are different from the normal chat client will be in separate videos. Because up till now, we have used the chat client. We have set an OpenAI client or a Azure OpenAI client and said get chat client and then get agent. But there's also, so this is what we have done so far. We have said get chat client, but there's also a version that says get OpenAI response client instead. And it's the only thing that is different between these two. You even get the same object type back here. So you might be thinking, other than, okay, this one, if you new it up, it will come up and warn you about it being experimental. But you might say, they look the same, so they probably can't be that much of a difference. But that is not the case. It's way not the case. Because what you can see, or not see yet, because I have masked each one of these so it won't confuse too much. We take them one at a time. But we are going to see, for example, here that chat is available in both the chat client, the response client, and the response client can both be newed up as an OpenAI resource or as an Azure OpenAI resource, but they have different features. In general, the OpenAI version have all the features, and the Azure OpenAI version have some of the features. Because it seems like, now that I have seen it all, that Azure rather want you to go to the Azure AI Foundry. And I kind of understand them because they want to have control over their own API with their own portal. But they have semi support for the response client. But in real life, I probably would not use it. But I've included it here for reference. So chat is, of course, supported. Function calling is, of course, supported. Structured output is, of course, supported. So all the basic stuff is supported in all three. So far, we could say, why even bother with the different ones? What we can do in response client and not in chat client is to get the reasoning summary. So whenever you use a reasoning model, it will come back with answers, of course, and it will tell you it has used so and so many tokens for reasoning. But in a chat client, you can't get that summary back, what it's for, what was its step-by-step process. You can that in the response client, both for OpenAI and Azure OpenAI. And this is what I mean by it can do more. Because I actually thought that the entire agent framework could not work with reasoning. And that was because I was using the chat client, which can't give it back. So you can do that. And of course, I will have a video on how that works. It's also different how you actually set the reasoning effort on a response client. So that will be included in there as well. Then one tool I knew that was not in chat client was the web search tool. So when you use the chat client and do a web search on something current, it would just use its world knowledge and think it's 2024 right now. So web search is possible in OpenAI, where you just give it an extra tool that are a remote tool, and then you can just ask a up-to-date question and it will actually be able to answer back without you needing to do anything else. The Azure OpenAI version cannot do that. There you would need to use the Azure AI Foundry instead, because they want to have more corporate control over the web search. And as you also see over here, I have a small star. That means that these tools that have a star actually have extra cost on them. So you need to go to their pricing page and see that, I think it was web search costs $0.003 per 1,000 or something like that. Code interpreter tool. So you have probably seen that in ChatGPT as well, where it writes some Python code and can use that in order to calculate something or generate a pie chart or a bar chart and so on. And of course, Chat Client can't do that because it doesn't have that tool built in. But up in OpenAI, you can do this. It sort of works in Azure OpenAI, but it's limited in that it can run code and stuff, but it cannot produce files in the other end. Or at least I couldn't get it to do that. And again, whenever you want to go the Azure route, it's better to go with the AI Foundry, which I know can do it. Then there's a file search tool. So in Chat Client, you of course need to do your own RAG implementation with various files and vector stores and stuff. In the response client, there is actually a vector store and a file store that you can use, upload to, and have the tool search using that tool. Again, response client in Azure OpenAI cannot do this. You need to use AI Foundry instead because they want it to be part of the various blob storage and such. I'm not really sure if I would use this in real life, though. I like to have full control over my RAG data. But if you want to have it next and up in OpenAI's platform, then you can do it. Then another thing I came along was, for example, that ChatGPT-5 Codex, which is a LLM model for coding, is not available in Chat Client, and it's one of the first that are not available there. So it sounds like that OpenAI might beginning to only have certain LLM models that only works with the responses client. In general, they see the Chat Client as a stable client. It's not going away, but they want everyone to go slowly to the response client because that's where they actually make new code. So this is the first model that actually can't run with the Chat Client. I think it's a political limitation more than a technical limitation that it cannot run there. But it is possible to work with it using the response client. Then we have, if you've seen the Azure AI Foundry, where you can store your agents and your conversations up in Azure. That was what we called conversations and having them up in the cloud. The Chat Client itself cannot do that. It can, of course, work with the agent thread and can give us it back in JSON, and we can store it ourselves. But Azure AI Foundry, you didn't need to do anything. It was stored by default. In the response client, it's sort of in between because what happens is that you can refer to previous responses. So you don't have the entire conversation, but you can say, ask a question with one agent, and then have a response ID that comes back, and you can refer to that response ID in a second question as if it was a follow-up question to the first one. That's how OpenAI works in general, that you can always go to the previous response, previous response, previous response. So I called it limited compared to the AI Foundry. And I don't know if I would use it, especially because I can't just get the entire conversation out like I can with AI Foundry. But it is possible to actually do hosting of online conversation. There's also not really an interface for it. It's just in the log that you can see these. The final thing I put in here, which is in the favor of chat client, because you might be sitting here and saying, why in the world do we ever use a chat client when all this cool thing can happen? And that is, of course, because all this is OpenAI specific. Well, not web searches, but Google and does it in an entirely different way than OpenAI. So if you are OpenAI all the way, you would just more or less be beneficial in using this all the time. But if you're just doing simple stuff, or if you want to be available with all the different extra things like Open Router and Hugging Face and stuff, they all implement the chat client, which is this basic features set, and then they build on top of that on their own. So that is one of the major reasons why chat clients still have a place in all this, that you can use it with the other clients. But if you want any of the cool stuff over here, you need to switch to the response client if you're running OpenAI as your provider. And again, I would probably, if I run Azure OpenAI as my provider, I would not go to response client, but I will go the step further and go to the Azure AI Foundry, which is a kind of superset of this as well. So you can say chat client is the low level, response client is the next level up, which is the way OpenAI wants to go, and Azure AI Foundry, which there again will be multiple additional videos on, is the one where Azure is taking us, so they can not have that direct tie with OpenAI using that platform, and use other models as well with the same API. So that is actually the overview, and as you can see, there's a lot of things to dive into, and again, there will be separate videos about each of these topics like reasoning, web search, and so on. But with that, thank you for attending this session, and see you in the next one.